Administrator Vorix of the Galactic Concord tapped 3 of his 4 clawed digits against the observation console, his crystalline ocular implants narrowing with calculated anticipation. The human research team had been on Kronos 7 for 17 standard cycles, longer than any previous expedition had survived the planet's temporal instabilities. As Chief Temporal Oversight Officer for Sector Gamma 9, Vorix had personally authorized this mission, though he'd never disclosed its true purpose to the scientists. Transmit final status update. Vorix ordered his subordinate, his voice modulated to conceal any hint of emotion. Administrator, responded Officer Klaire, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with deference. The human team's vital signs remain stable. They're currently in Quadrant Theta, where temporal fluctuations reach 300% variance. Vorix's mandibles clicked in irritation. Impossible. Previous teams experienced severe temporal disorientation within hours in that sector. Check for equipment malfunction. Klaire's tendrils danced across the control surface. Confirmed functional. Administrator. The chronometric implants show them moving deliberately through the temporal distortion field. They appear comfortable. Vorix leaned forward, his chitinous exoskeleton creaking. Kronos 7 was the most temporally unstable planet known to galactic science. Time on its surface didn't flow linearly. It fractured into overlapping streams, creating pockets where minutes could feel like hours or seconds could stretch into days. The atmosphere contained chronotin particles that disrupted standard temporal perception, and the native life forms had evolved to exist simultaneously in multiple timeframes. The observation screen flickered to life, displaying footage from a concealed drone. 5 humans moved through a landscape where reality itself seemed to shimmer. Dr. Klaire Dawson, lead chronophysicist and mission commander, pointed toward a formation of crystalline structures that pulsed with temporal energy. Behind her, Engineer Kenji Tanaka adjusted equipment that shouldn't have functioned in such conditions. Dr. Lara Kim collected samples, while Commander Anya Rostova maintained vigilance, her temporal stabilizer humming steadily. Completing the team was Zeus, an experimental AI construct designed specifically for temporal research. They've adapted the Concord-issue temporal stabilizers to create a localized chronotin dampening field, Klaire noted, her voice tinged with reluctant adoration. Their modifications are innovative. Increase surveillance, Vorix ordered, his confidence wavering. I want hourly updates. 3 planetary rotations later, Vorix hadn't left the monitoring station. The humans hadn't just survived, they were thriving. They'd mapped temporal eddies that previous expeditions had died, trying to understand. They'd established communication with native life forms that existed partially outside conventional time. Most disturbingly, they'd begun constructing a facility that somehow stabilized the surrounding temporal anomalies. How is this possible? Vorix demanded, his chromatophores shifting to a deep crimson of agitation. No species has ever adapted to Kronos 7's temporal fluctuations. Science Officer Trellis joined the observation, her voice measured with academic curiosity. Administrator, I've reviewed their mission parameters. Unlike previous teams, this group wasn't merely sent to study the planet. They were specifically selected for their unique neurological patterns. Human brains process temporal information differently than most galactic species. Their neural plasticity allows them to adapt to temporal disorientation where others fail. Vorix's mandibles clicked rapidly. What Trellis didn't know, and what the Concord had deliberately concealed, was that this team had been chosen not just for their scientific expertise, but because their brainwave patterns matched those required to interface with the planet's core temporal anomaly. The Concord didn't want researchers on Kronos 7. They wanted weapons testers. On the 8th day, Dr. Dawson's voice came through the communication channel, a channel that should have been rendered useless by the planet's chronotin interference. Administrator Vorix, she said, standing calmly in an area where time visibly rippled around her like heat haze. We need to discuss mission parameters. Vorix straightened, his chromatophores flashing with surprise. Parameters are clear, Doctor. You were sent to study Kronos 7's temporal phenomena and report your findings. Dawson smiled, that unsettling human expression that revealed calcium-based dental structures. About that, we've discovered something your preliminary surveys missed. Kronos 7 isn't just a planet with temporal anomalies. It's a living temporal entity. The entire planet is a single consciousness that exists across multiple time frames simultaneously. Vorix's blood ran cold. This was precisely what the Concord had suspected but could never prove. We've established communication with it, Dawson continued. And it's shown us things. Specifically, it's shown us the true purpose of our mission. The camera panned to reveal not just a research facility, but a sophisticated temporal harmonization array, one that stabilized the surrounding time distortions rather than merely protecting against them. The Concord didn't send us here to study Kronos 7, Dawson said, her voice steady. You sent us to test whether human neural patterns could interface with the planet's consciousness for military applications. You wanted to weaponize time itself. Vorix remained silent, his chromatophores draining to a pale gray. The temporal entity has shown us your classified Concord documents, Dawson pressed. Project Kronos Gambit. Developing soldiers who can perceive and manipulate time, creating temporal shock troops that could strike before their enemies even decide to fight. She took a deep breath. We refuse to participate in this, but we have an alternative proposal. Vorix finally found his voice. You have no leverage, Doctor. You're scientists on a Concord-funded mission. You have no authority to... The Concord isn't the only galactic power interested in Kronos 7, Dawson interrupted. The Temporal Accord has already dispatched a diplomatic vessel. They've known about the planet's sentient nature for centuries and have respected its sovereignty. Vorix's mandibles clicked furiously. The Temporal Accord was the Concord's primary rival, a coalition of species who believed temporal manipulation should be strictly regulated for peaceful purposes. We've prepared a formal declaration, Dawson continued, recognizing Kronos 7 as a sovereign temporal entity and in establishing it as neutral ground for temporal research under joint Concord Accord oversight. In exchange, we offer the Concord exclusive access to non-military temporal research for the next 50 standard years. She paused, then added with another unsettling smile. We'll expect your response within one standard cycle. The Accord vessel arrives in 36 hours. The transmission ended. Klaire looked at Vorix with all four eye stalks widened in shock. Administrator, our legal databases show no precedent for researchers renegotiating their mission parameters with galactic rivals. Vorix stared at the monitoring screen, where Dawson and her team moved with purpose through the temporal distortions. He had intended Kronos 7 to be their proving ground for temporal weapons. Instead, they had become the planet's advocates. Prepare a diplomatic response, Vorix said finally, his chromatophores shifting to a deep blue of resignation. And update the official classification of humans in our databases. Klaire blinked in surprise. New classification? Administrator? Vorix watched as Dawson demonstrated something to her team, a gesture that caused the temporal ripples around them to momentarily stabilize. Class Omega, he said quietly. The only species capable of negotiating with time itself. The humans hadn't come to Kronos 7 by accident. Dr. Klaire Dawson adjusted the chronoton regulator on her wrist, feeling the familiar hum as it synchronized her personal timeline with the planet's fractured reality. She'd suspected the Concord's true intentions from the beginning. The unusually specific neurological requirements, the classified clearance levels, the way certain mission parameters had been deliberately obscured. But she'd accepted the assignment anyway. Klaire, Kenji Tanaka called from the observation platform. The temporal resonance is stabilizing. Whatever you did out there, it worked. Dawson joined him, looking out across the crystalline landscape where time itself seemed to shimmer like a larage. Kronos 7 wasn't just a planet with unusual properties. It was alive in a way no galactic civilization had ever encountered. Not biological life as conventionally understood, but a consciousness that existed simultaneously across multiple timelines. It's not what I did, Dawson corrected gently. It's what we've learned to do together. The temporal entity, what we've started calling Kronos, has been teaching us. Commander Rostova approached, her temporal stabilizer emitting a steady blue glow. The Concord won't take this well. They wanted weapons, not diplomacy. Dawson nodded. Which is exactly why we have to do this. If the Concord weaponizes temporal manipulation, it could destabilize the entire galactic timeline. Entire civilizations could be erased before they even begin. Dr. Lara Kim joined them, holding a datapad displaying complex waveforms. Fascinating, she murmured. Kronos isn't just a single entity. It's a network of consciousness that spans not just this planet, but potentially the entire galaxy. The temporal anomalies we've been studying? They're not random fluctuations. They're its neural activity. Zeus, the AI construct, materialized beside them in a shimmer of light. My temporal processing capabilities are increasing exponentially, the AI reported. I can now perceive approximately 3.7 seconds into probable futures with 82% accuracy. Kronos is enhancing my capabilities. Tanaka whistled. So the Concord was right about one thing. Humans can interface with this temporal consciousness. They just wanted to use it for the wrong reasons. Dawson looked toward the crystalline spire at the center of their research compound, the heart of their temporal harmonization array. We've been given a choice. We can help the Concord weaponize time, or we can establish Kronos 7 as neutral ground where temporal research can proceed responsibly. Rostova crossed her arms. And if the Concord says no, then the Temporal Accord steps in, Dawson said. They've known about Kronos for centuries. They've respected its sovereignty, observing from afar without interference. They've agreed to support our declaration of Kronos 7 as a sovereign temporal entity. Kim frowned. But what about the science? The potential medical applications alone could be developed responsibly under joint oversight. Dawson finished for her. Not rush to weaponization. Kronos has shown me possible futures, Lara. Futures where temporal weapons create paradoxes that unravel entire star systems. We can't let that happen. Zeus's form flickered. I have calculated 1592 probable outcomes based on our current trajectory. In 1289 of them, establishing Kronos 7 as neutral ground prevents catastrophic temporal warfare. Tanaka grinned. So we're really doing this? We're telling the most powerful galactic government to back off? Dawson met each of their gazes in turn. We're doing more than that. We're creating something new. A framework for responsible temporal research that could benefit all galactic civilizations. Kronos has shown me possibilities I never dreamed of. Healing temporal wounds in space-time. Preventing natural disasters by subtle timeline adjustments. Even extending healthy lifespans through controlled temporal harmonization. She looked toward the horizon, where the sky shimmered with overlapping timelines. This isn't just about saying no to the Concord. It's about saying yes to something better. Administrator Vorix stared at the diplomatic packet from the Temporal Accord that had just arrived. The timing was suspiciously convenient, almost as if the humans had known exactly when to make their move. Administrator, Klaire said hesitantly, the Concord High Command is demanding immediate extraction of the research team and seizure of all data. Vorix's chromatophore shifted to a deep violet, the color of profound contemplation. And what does Command propose to do with the team once extracted? Klaire's bioluminescence dimmed. They've classified the mission as compromised. Standard protocol would require neural reconditioning. Vorix felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades: doubt. The Concord had sent 5 of the galaxy's finest temporal scientists to Kronos 7 under false pretenses, intending to use them as test subjects for temporal weapons research. Now those same scientists had not only survived, but had somehow established communication with the planet's sentient temporal field and positioned themselves as its advocates. Science Officer Trellis entered the observation chamber. Administrator, I've been reviewing the humans' research logs. They've made breakthroughs we never anticipated. Their temporal harmonization array doesn't just protect against Kronos 7's anomalies. It creates a stable interface between linear and non-linear time. Vorix considered this. The Concord had wanted weapons. But what if there were more valuable applications? Medical technologies that could heal temporal injuries. Navigation systems that could safely traverse chronoton-rich regions of space. Even communication methods that could send messages across time itself. The Temporal Accord has a long history of responsible temporal research, Trellis continued. If we push too hard, we risk driving the humans, and whatever knowledge they've gained, into their arms permanently. Vorix's mandibles clicked slowly. The Concord had always viewed the Temporal Accord as naive idealists, but perhaps there was wisdom in their approach. Temporal manipulation was too dangerous to weaponize. History was filled with examples of civilizations that had attempted to control time and paid catastrophic consequences. Prepare a response to the humans' proposal, Vorix ordered finally. We'll accept their declaration of Kronos 7 as a sovereign temporal entity, with joint Concord Accord oversight, but we'll insist on equal research access. Klaire blinked in surprise. Administrator, Command will never approve. I'll handle Command, Vorix interrupted. There's something the humans have shown us that Command refuses to acknowledge. Time cannot be weaponized without destroying the very fabric of reality we seek to control. Better to work with time than against it. He looked at the observation screen where Dr. Dawson stood calmly in a region where time visibly fractured around her. Update the mission parameters. This is no longer a weapons testing program. It's the beginning of something new. Something that could change how all galactic civilizations understand time itself. On Kronos 7th, Dr. Klaire Dawson felt a temporal resonance shift as the Concord's response arrived. She'd known they would come around. The temporal entity had shown her this possible future among many. The Concord has accepted our terms, Zeus announced, its form shimmering with temporal energy. With modifications, of course. Dawson smiled. Of course. What did they change? They've insisted on equal research access, Tanaka said, reviewing the transmission. And they want to establish a permanent Concord research facility on the planet. Rostova frowned. That's problematic. The whole point was to keep this neutral. Dawson shook her head. Actually, it's perfect. The Concord establishing a presence here under our agreed framework is better than them trying to seize control by force. And the Temporal Accord will have equal access. It creates balance. Kim looked up from her datapad. The temporal entity, Kronos, is responding positively to the agreement. The local temporal anomalies are stabilizing further. Dawson walked to the edge of their compound, looking out across the crystalline landscape. Kronos 7 was no longer just a research site. It was becoming something new, something unprecedented in galactic history. A place where time itself was respected rather than exploited. Zeus, she said, prepare to transmit the final treaty draft to both the Concord and the Accord. Include the additional provisions we discussed about ethical oversight and research limitations. The AI's form flickered. Already done, Doctor. The treaty includes mechanisms for resolving disputes through temporal consensus rather than force. A concept the Concord found challenging but ultimately acceptable. Tanaka joined her at the overlook. You know what this means, don't you? Kronos 7 could become the first truly neutral ground in galactic history. Not just politically neutral, but temporally neutral, a place where past, present, and future can coexist peacefully. Dawson nodded. And it's just the beginning. If we can establish this framework here, we can apply it elsewhere. Temporal research doesn't have to mean temporal warfare. Rostova approached, her expression thoughtful. The Concord is already planning their first research team. They've requested access to study the medical applications of temporal harmonization. Good, Dawson said. Let them, but they'll operate under our established protocols, with oversight from both the Concord and the Accord. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. She looked toward the crystalline spire at the planet's heart, where the temporal entity's presence was strongest. We've been given a chance to do something extraordinary, not just for humanity, but for all galactic civilizations. To show that time isn't something to be conquered, but something to be understood and respected. Zeus materialized beside her. I have calculated the probability of long-term success for this endeavor. Current projections show a 78.3% chance of establishing sustainable temporal research protocols within 50 standard years. Dawson smiled. Not bad odds. But remember, Zeus, on Kronos 7, probability isn't destiny. The future is always changing. As she spoke, the temporal ripples around them seemed to harmonize, creating a brief moment of perfect temporal alignment where past, present, and future flowed together seamlessly. In that moment, Dawson saw possibilities stretching before them, not just for Kronos 7, but for the entire galaxy. The humans hadn't come to Kronos 7 to survive a death world. They had come to change how the galaxy understood time itself. And against all odds, they had succeeded. Administrator Vorix watched as the first official Concord research team prepared to land on Kronos 7 under the new treaty framework. The transition hadn't been easy. The High Command had resisted fiercely, and there had been threats of disciplinary action against him for capitulating to researchers. But Vorix had stood firm. The evidence was undeniable. Kronos 7 wasn't just a planet to be exploited, but a sentient temporal entity that demanded respect. And the humans, those remarkable, adaptable humans, had shown the way forward. Administrator, Klaire said, the humans have requested a personal audience with you upon your next visit to Kronos 7. Vorix's chromatophores shifted to a thoughtful blue. What do they want? Klaire hesitated. They didn't specify, but Zeus, their AI construct, mentioned something about temporal debt and unresolved paradoxes. Vorix felt a flicker of unease. The humans had access to knowledge about time that no other species possessed. If they had discovered paradoxes created by the Concord's previous temporal experiments, schedule the meeting, he ordered. And Klaire? Yes, Administrator. Prepare a full historical record of all Concord temporal research projects dating back 5 centuries. I have a feeling we'll need it. As he turned back to the observation screen, Vorix watched the Concord research vessel descend through Kronos 7's shimmering atmosphere. The human's compound glowed with stable temporal energy, a beacon of what was possible when time was respected rather than weaponized. Science Officer Trellis approached. Administrator, I've been studying the humans' research on temporal harmonization. The medical applications alone could revolutionize treatment for chronotin exposure victims. We've already developed a prototype device that could heal temporal wounds in space-time. Vorix nodded. Good. Release the research to the Temporal Accord as per our agreement. True progress requires transparency. Trellis blinked in surprise. You're really committed to this new approach, aren't you? Vorix looked at the observation screen where Dr. Dawson stood calmly in a region where time visibly rippled around her. The humans have shown us something extraordinary, Trellis. They've shown us that time isn't a weapon to be wielded, but a river to be navigated with care. Those who try to dam the river or weaponize its flow inevitably drown in their own arrogance. He turned to face her fully. The Concord has spent centuries trying to control time. The humans have shown us a better way. To work with time rather than against it. That is the true Kronos gambit. As he spoke, the observation screen flickered, showing Dawson looking directly at the camera as if she could see him watching. She raised her hand in what the humans called a wave, a gesture of greeting that somehow felt appropriate across the vastness of space and the complexities of time. Vorix raised his clawed digits in return, a gesture of respect between species who had finally begun to understand that some forces were too profound to conquer, time among them. On Kronos 7, a new era had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, time itself was on their side.